Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the morning meeting. If you're just joining us now, you missed the pregame show, which was significantly better than anything we'll say the rest of the way, but that's why you got to join the pregame show. Thank you for being part of this program, the morning meeting. As you may notice, Sean is off again today. I'd say he's on assignment, but that might not be true. He's off. And Dan is here, and Larry is back. Hats off to Larry, one of my favorite Del Shannon songs. Larry, thank you for coming back.
Thank you. It's great to be here. And thanks for welcoming me back.
All right. So Larry is here, and Larry brings with him an ample dose of peace, love, and a modicum of understanding. But we hope by the end of the hour that will have ratcheted up. We welcome you all to raise your hands and participate if you're here on the two-way platform. If you're watching on X or YouTube, don't raise your hand. And don't say it with me now, loud and proud. Put smack in the chat. Please do not do that. We try to have a different tone here than most programs. Spirited discussion. Sometimes after the program, I have to fine Dan and Sean for being too vituperative towards each other. We have strict standards on that. But usually, but usually I don't.
Vituperative.
Usually I don't because they get the notion of bringing the presumption of grace to all, including to each other and to all of you. So please raise your hand if you'd like to be in the conversation. Maybe we'll cancel the show if we don't get three new people today. I can't promise either way, but we'd love some new folks. If you've never raised your hand before, and as always, a reminder to you, this program is based on the network news division's morning meetings, in which they do exactly what we do. They run through the events of the day at a high level and then offer some analysis. And then again, our O. Henry twist, you get to participate. So please, if you'd like to be in the conversation, raise your hand. On my program, Two-Way Tonight,
Yeah,
you
you're a good
know,
one.
who's on? David Mamet.
I saw. I'm so jealous
David
that you
Mamet.
have the great David Mamet.
We do.
Can I just say real fast?
Yes,
my,
sir.
my first assignment writing for Big Hollywood, which was Andrew Breitbart's premier website focusing on the entertainment business. He said, "Can you write an article about David Mamet coming out as a conservative?" Which wasn't technically true. He didn't come out as conservative, but he wrote an article in the Village Voice with the headline, "Why I'm No Longer a Brain Dead Liberal." And I had the theater beat, so I got to
That's
write
a
about
subtle
David.
headline.
Yeah, it was, well, Mamet's known for his subtlety, right?
Mamet and Sorkin to me are in classes by themselves, or a class by themselves, however to say that. They're just
Greatest
both
dialogue.
And
greatest
Steve
dialogue.
Elmendorf is no slouch.
No, and Elmendorf too. It's good. Anyway, so join me at 6 tonight, and we'll tell you more about other programs coming up in a moment. Let's go through the schedule. The President of the United States said this before, but during the Cold War, back when I started my career, you always started the morning meeting with the president's schedule, regardless of what he was doing and what else was going on in the world. It was just like a very Cold War orientation. Must know what the president's doing. Well, today, for the second straight day, the president's got no public events. Yesterday, we know he met with a bunch of senators, including Senate Leader Thune, and either talked to or met with the some of the more wavering Republican senators on the reconciliation package. We'll talk about that in a moment. Caroline Levitt briefs at 1 o'clock. And Caroline, if you're watching or if your colleagues are watching, please text me back. I texted her something yesterday. I need a reply. So Caroline, please reply. All right. Vice President is going to something called the American Compass's New World Gala tonight. Marco Rubio is going too. This is the organization that Drew Holden works for. Drew, a regular guest here on this program. Larry, what is American Compass? What are they all about?
It started with some former Romney Republican types that started it. Orrin Cass actually began it, but I think he stepped down. I think he's like the economic.
Yeah, he's like the chief economist
director,
and founder and chief economist.
I would call it a center-right organization who is not hostile, which is not hostile to the Trump administration, but certainly is a little bit less MAGA as other organizations in town. And I think it's noteworthy that both Vance and Rubio are going together to this event.
Yeah.
And they do serious policy work, which is in short supply on both parties. So and Orrin Cass, sheer coincidence, will be our guest tomorrow night on Two-Way Tonight. So we'll be able to debrief him on his time with Marco Rubio and the vice president. Linda McMahon and the SEC chair both testify on the Hill today. Senate bipartisan, separate bipartisan lunches, as is true on Tuesdays, will happen today. The House is back. Job openings and factory orders out later today. All right. So, in the news, Russia-Ukraine talks in Turkey yesterday yielded a couple things, some prisoner exchange promises, and the prime minister of Turkey, is he prime minister or president? I think he's prime minister, right?
Erdogan.
Erdogan is
think
prime minister. Or is
president.
president?
I think
President.
president.
President Erdogan is now proposing four-way talks. So, as we say in Vietnam, the shape of the table will be rectangular, with the Putin, Zelensky, and Trump and Erdogan. Don't know if that will happen. Still a lot of conversation about the Ukrainian drone attack. And although people continue to say it won't affect this war as much as send warnings about the future of warfare and the vulnerability, there is an under-noticed factor. 104, please. Foreign Policy Magazine has an article which raises the question. The Russians have a doctrine that says if you attack their nuclear assets, they reserve the right to attack back nuclear. And they reserve the right to attack back nuclear, not just the attacker, but anyone who aided and abetted the attack. And it has not escaped notice by me and others that President Trump has not commented on the Ukrainian attack. And I would say, without any reporting, but just common sense, it's hard to believe the Ukrainians did that without any help from NATO or from the United States, or at least telling them they were going to do it, because it's a pretty provocative thing. And so if they did it without telling anybody, come on now. So in theory, this could have been the tripwire, and maybe still could be, unfortunately, for what President Biden was extremely concerned about, which is conducting the defense of Ukraine without giving Putin the quote unquote excuse to use nuclear weapons. The other development that continues to gurgle and burble is the question of this Russian sanctions bill, which Senator Graham and his Democratic partner are still saying they want to bring forward. The administration seems not so enthusiastic about letting 535 secretaries of state set policy towards Russian sanctions. Here is the aforementioned Caroline Levitt on this matter, 105. While he remains in constant communication with leaders on the Hill, the press secretary said, speaking of her boss, the decision on whether to impose sanctions will come from the commander-in-chief. Okay. Lastly, really good Wall Street Journal story today I recommend to you, laying out, using the drone attack to lay out where the Journal thinks things stand, and highlights the reality that not only has President Trump not talked about the drone attack, but where he stands now on trying to move this process along is pretty opaque. So, Dan, what's happening next on this matter? Will there be a four-way meeting? Will the Russians, launch a nuclear attack? Where are we?
I don't know. I mean, as you say, like this has been what we've been talking about for a while, which is what is Trump's play as Putin has been defiant. And now, a lot of these stories have said Ukraine responded because they felt like they had no choice. It wasn't stopping. Putin keeps launching wave after wave of attacks deeper and deeper into Ukraine with more and more civilian deaths. So they were like, we've got to do something. I can't see Trump going to Turkey to be a part of a meeting that Turkey's he likes to make it all about Trump. Trump organized it. Trump's the central, main guy. Like they're kind of subservient to me, and I'm moving the chessboard. I don't know. I mean, his continued silence and kind of not doing anything, he's beginning to look small. Like he has no control over this situation. And I don't say that to be like take a cheap shot. Like it kind of is like Biden a little bit.
The Journal piece doesn't say it as pointedly as you did, and you said it in a less pointed way than you might have. But I read the Journal story that way. They basically are saying, what's going on? Like where's the president of the United States on this after saying he'd be the one to end the war? Larry, what is your point of view on all this?
Well, I agree with a lot of what Dan said. I don't think he wants anything to do with these four-way discussions, and I think it's yet to be determined whether the United States had a heads up on this drone attack. I mean, there's conflicting reports. I understand, Mark, that you think that it defies logic that they would do this without assistance. But at the same time, I think Zelensky operates kind of in his own world sometimes. And I can tell you within the Trump coalition, such as it is, you've got your MAGA forces. You've also got, more, traditional moderate type Republicans who were pretty robust in wanting America to have a full participation in helping Ukraine in this fight. The MAGA side of it, I think, was best represented last night by Steve Bannon, who I don't know if you saw on Chris Cuomo's show, came out in full force. Again, he's saying Lindsey Graham should be arrested when he gets back to the United States.
Yeah.
He thinks that this is a subversive move to drag Trump and America into a kinetic World War III, because this attack on bombers, as impressive as it appears, is also a direct assault on Russia's nuclear triad. And you just, quoted their doctrine. They have every right to retaliate.
But I
Or
think
at
the
least
challenge
they
for Trump,
claim the right.
right?
Yeah.
But I mean, part of the challenge for Trump
That-
is you're getting all this mixed messaging on Iran, right? Where Witkoff, basically, it sounds like in writing, we said you can keep some of your fused material, but Trump, keeps saying strength, no way. They're never going to be allowed to keep it. So they're at odds with Iran. He doesn't seem to have any control over Netanyahu, who just kind of continues to bulldoze forward. And there are more and more rumors that they want to hit Iran, yesterday. And now you have Ukraine. And for a guy who projects strength and control all the time, and this isn't a Trump phenomenon, like this is the reality of the world as we're trying to confront China. You don't have as much control.
Yeah. Getting leverage over Xi, Putin, and Netanyahu. I've said it before.
Yeah.
That's the job of an American president. And our previous presidents have not done so great on that score. I will say, Larry, I don't like to jump to conclusions and assume facts not in evidence. But I really do think the preponderance of logic says Zelensky would be taking an enormous risk, leaving aside whether he needed intelligence and operational assistance to conduct that mission. He would be taking an enormous risk to go towards the tripwire of a nuclear World War III without telling his benefactors and patrons in the United States and Europe that he planned to do it. Maybe he did, and I understand he's an independent cuss, but I just cannot believe. And again, I think one of the tells is President Trump hasn't said a word about it, even though the position of the United States government is that they weren't told in advance. I just find that hard to believe.
It would be hard to believe as well, especially from a so-called ally that we are supplying with
Yeah.
these weapons.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that Zelensky is sort of trying to find his own path here to try to force this conversation. He doesn't like the fact that he was boxed in during the Oval Office visit. Every single move that has put him at the negotiation table, he seems like he's been dragged there and forced there. He believes that there is no peace. This needs to be resolved with war. At least that seems to be the impression.
Yeah.
And he doesn't like where these peace talks are going. Let's face it, the document that was released yesterday from Russia is basically, okay, we'll end the war as long as Ukraine surrenders. I mean, that's not going anywhere. So
non-starter.
I don't know. I think the fact that Trump hasn't said anything about it tells me that maybe he didn't know.
Maybe. All right, let me read you just a few sentences from this journal story, and then we'll move to reconciliation. If the Trump administration has a strategy beyond appealing to Putin to halt the fighting in return for territorial concessions and other inducements, it is yet to make one clear. Joe Biden sought to contain the conflict by imposing sanctions on how Russia and establishing limits on how Ukraine could use some U.S.-provided missiles. But Trump hasn't sought to ratchet up the economic and military pressure on Russia, and he has yet to actively involve himself in planning for Ukraine's defense, including coordinating on future weapons needs. He has been unusually silent about Ukraine's drone strikes on Russian bases. Again, it is really opaque where the president is on this now, and he put himself forward as the person who would solve this. All right, reconciliation. As I said, the president spent a certain amount of his time yesterday working on senators. They clearly want to get this done by July. I continue to say that the X date is going to be a big factor. As Sean said yesterday, August recess will be a big factor. Big development yesterday, which is that the Senate leader, Mr. Thune, 106, made it clear that they weren't going to change, despite the noise from some of his colleagues. They're going to change very much of the House bill. It'll have to track very closely. He's talking now about the Senate version to the House bill because they've got a fragile majority and struck a very delicate balance. But there are some things that senators want to add to the bill or things we do slightly differently. Thune added that Senate Republicans are on track to deliver by Independence Day, but he acknowledged there are a lot of moving parts. And so we're going to start to see this week different committees unfurling their marks from the different committees, with finance going towards the end and probably last. Here is one of the most negative senators regarding the reconciliation bill that came from the House, the gentleman from Kentucky, who isn't going to vote for this bill because they're not going to take out the debt ceiling increase, and he won't vote for that. Here's Rand Paul on Squawk Box 108.
What would it take for you to support this bill?
Well, the main thing that I object to is raising the debt ceiling $4 or $5 trillion. That's an indication that we'll borrow that much. It's an indication that we'll put the debt on the back burner. We'll have no more discussion of it for a year or two. And really, we're locked in a year right now where in March of this year, most of the Republicans, not me, voted to continue the Biden spending levels in March. So we're operating under a continuing resolution which originated as Biden spending levels. You remember Republicans saying, Bidenomics, Biden inflation, Biden this, Biden that. Well, they voted for that in March. So the deficit here at the end of the fiscal year, at the end of September, will be about $2.2 trillion. I'm not for that, so I voted against the spending levels. But now they want me to vote for $5 trillion worth of increase in a debt ceiling, and I'm just not for that. That's not conservative.
How many people do you think you have with you? What does this bill ultimately look like in the end?
You know, I think there are 3 or 4 of us. If there are 4 of us who want it to be more fiscally conservative, I think we can reduce the spending levels and perhaps separate out the debt ceiling as well. But it takes 4 people with courage, and 4 people with courage can make the bill into anything we want it to. Right now, there are competing factions, though. There are 4 or 5 who don't want any spending cuts, and there are 4 or 5 who want more spending cuts. So it's who sticks together better and who has more courage to stand up and say no.
So I think that in the end, a lot of the people who are making noises now are going to vote yes. And we're really dealing with just a very small handful of people who might tank the thing. Larry, which senators, assuming you like me think they can't get Rand Paul, which Republican senators are you watching most closely in this dance of doom?
Ron Johnson. Senator Johnson of Wisconsin, I think, is going to be an important voice here, not just for the cuts that Rand Paul wants. They're never going to get the debt ceiling, not in reconciliation. And by the way, I think that the message from the White House is going to very quickly, and you're already starting to see it with some posts from Truth Social from the president, back off from the big, beautiful bill language and call it what it is, a tax cut. If Senator Paul and his doppelganger in the House, Congressman Massey, if they want to attack spending, do it the old-fashioned way in the Budget Committee hearings, the Appropriations Committee. Go back to regular order. You can start the process on fiscal year 26 right now, and I think that Trump will be along for the ride on it. But this is a tax cut bill, not only a tax cut bill, but it's a tax cut bill Trump just won the election with. That's what this is all about. And Senator Paul, Senator Johnson, any of the other spending hawks in the Senate, if they block this bill, it means they're blocking tax cuts. And that hurts. That hurts big time.
Dan.
Yeah, I just think they're going to posture. They're going to say what they are, and Trump's going to roll them with a steamroller / hammer. And I think it's smart. What Trump is doing is by working the phones and being very aggressive now, he is preventing any momentum with any of these others from building. So as long as you keep them boxed in, you keep all of MAGA, it's like, all right, say what you want, but the bill is moving forward. We're not making any material changes to this. And if they do, it's going to be less cutting, higher deficit, and get on board. And I think between that and what we're about to go to next, Trump seems to want by like July 4th to have a series of victories to roll into the summer when everyone goes home in August with like, we passed the one big beautiful bill, tax cuts, as Larry said. The tariffs are coming to an end. I got some pound of flesh from A, B, C, D, and E. And like, let's roll into the fall and into the primary season and the midterms with a head of steam.
And don't forget the rescission package that they're sending up to the Hill today. You know, you got an administration who is saying to Congress for the first time in my memory, we don't want to spend this money. We want to cut this, take the money back. That boxes these Republicans into a corner. You want to go back to your state or to your district for the summer recess saying, hey, good news, everybody. I made sure we kept NPR. I didn't listen to Trump, and we kept the funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. That is a loser across the board. And that's going to be a good fig leaf, I think, for a lot of these guys, that this rescission package led by Russ Vogt at OMB is actually telling Congress, keep your money. We don't want it. And they only need a simple majority for that as well.
I don't think that thing ever sees the light of day.
Why? Who's stopping it?
All the people who don't want those cuts going into the midterms. They're going to offer it up. They'll talk about it. They'll walk it into the ground. I don't believe they will ever do that.
Those cuts are drag shows in Madagascar. It's circumcisions in Guatemala. It's all the stuff that America hates about the bloated government. There's no way Republicans want to go back there and say that they didn't make those cuts. It's low-hanging fruit. It's the easiest stuff.
They won't do it. All right,
we'll Mark, break the tie.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that it really matters that much. I think that the big fight right now to me is on Medicaid.
Yep.
And whether the administration is going to convince Republican senators and the public that the only reductions in Medicaid are to force able-bodied men to work or volunteer or get training, and to deny Medicaid to people in the country illegally.
Yeah, well, and but that's my point. It doesn't matter anything dollars and cents wise, but politically, it's a great fig leaf. It's a great thing for them to go back and say, look what we did. We cut these things. No more Sesame Street, which used to be a political loser, and now it's a badge of honor.
Yes. All right. Again, raise your hand if you want in on the conversation. A couple more topics from us. China, another great Wall Street Journal story. They're having an incredible run of dominance, I think, in a lot of coverage areas that I care about. Great profile today of the head trade negotiator under Premier Xi. His name is spelled H-E, but it's not pronounced he, unfortunately, because I long for the Abbott and Costello, who's on first routine, about she and he. In any event, but it's apparently pronounced ha.
I'm really more a they-them type, but thank you for
in any event. There's still a lot of mystery about what's going on with U.S. and China on trade. We still are anticipating a Trump-Xi phone call this week as a prelude to a potential summit sometime later this year. Reuters yesterday broke a story, 103. I've not seen anybody else match this. And Reuters says that the U.S. trade negotiators have told other countries that tomorrow is a deadline for them to submit their best offers for how they want to get the tariffs reduced that the U.S. has imposed on them and try to strike a bilateral deal. So, Dan, where are we on just the general question of tariffs? The increased steel and aluminum tariffs are in effect. What's going on with tariffs?
I read that story like a real estate or private equity deal. Best bids in by Wednesday, everybody. Like we're going to make, who's the lucky winner?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't understand what leverage that gives us. If everyone knows that you're desperate to get a deal, they've been resistant up until now. Okay, like we'll give you something, but is it meaningful? I keep saying like that to me is going to be the big deal. Like, do they announce more frameworks with the intent to get a deal to try to like just get this out of the headlines and again, kind of untangle this and get out of this mess? Are they real deals? And ultimately it's going to be, was it worth it? Was all of this, if it's not material, real, meaningful, big, meaty stuff, you did all of this for something very small. It's a tough sell.
Well, I think it's interesting, by the way, that they're pushing it now, because I think that the 90-day window on the pause
that's exactly it.
Is July 9th, right? Yep. So, I mean, so clearly they're wanting to like push this along and jumpstart the process and get things going. I think that between now and then, when the actual deadline hits on the pause, first week of July, I think you're going to see more corporations announcing onboarding and manufacturing here domestically. And I think this was revealed in your poll, Mark, on Friday about how the majority of the American people at least want to see an effort made to manufacture more here in America. And I know there's this myth out there that, oh, that's like a 6, 7, 8 year window to be able to do that. You know, when Elon Musk announced that he was leaving California to manufacture in Austin, Texas, it was about a year later when they rolled off their first car. It took them a year to ramp up a Tesla auto factory. That ain't nothing. It can be done if the motivation is there and manufacturers are motivated to do it. And that's up to the Trump administration to sort of use the carrot and stick domestically while they're doing the same overseas.
Larry, it speaks well that you're a fan of the People's Poll.
Who isn't? Who wouldn't be?
Good question. Only those who don't know about it. All right. Anything else on that? No. Last topic.
I will say that. I will say this. No matter
sir.
what they end up with, it's going to be the greatest, best tariff policy we've had since Andrew Jackson.
Yes.
I don't know what it's going to be.
No matter
That's
what.
right.
No
Absolutely
matter
will be. Guaranteed.
packaged. All right. I continue to ask Democrats for their fresh, new, original, captivating ideas that will help working class voters. And they go back to either spouting vagaries or denouncing the Trump administration's policies. I don't understand, and this is true of both parties, but particularly the Democrats. I don't understand why they have had, like, for several decades now, an inability to come up with new ideas that appeal, that are understandable, digestible, that make sense, that are popular, to help people afford an increasingly expensive world. But they don't seem to be able to. What they do seem able to do is have their top strategists fleece their richest donors out of more money to form more and more organizations to claim they're working on both policy and messaging, but they seem mostly to work on messaging. So here's a new one. Politico reports this morning, number 107, that there's a new group, a new think tank called Searchlight, inspired by the name of Harry Reid's hometown, started by a former Reid aide, Adam Jettleson. Is that how you pronounce his name, Dan?
Yep.
Jettleson,
Yep.
who was for a time Fetterman's chief of staff. And this article talks about how he's going to donors and asking for money to start this effort. And the article points out this is one of many to try to figure out how the party can win back working class voters by talking about policies that are appealing. But the article doesn't mention any actual policies. And it sounds like this may be another messaging effort. Dan,
Yes,
is this 1,000 flowers blooming, or is this a bunch of weeds in the yard?
Yeah, I think it's more the latter. Mark, you and I were texting a little over the weekend about this, because this comes on the heels of both Wes Moore and Tim Walz saying it's time for bold action. We need, admiration for Donald Trump. He's doing big, bold things. He's moving fast. He's unafraid. And we need to do the same thing. But of course, what was missing was what those things are.
Even one. Like,
yeah,
forget a list. Just one.
And I think the thing is, the party, the last kind of big push, the two big things that the party for the last 30 years have pushed since Bill Clinton ran through his term were healthcare and some sort of clean energy bill, right? Barack Obama got one, tried the second, didn't work. Joe Biden kind of, whatever one thinks, that was kind of the conclusion of the big push for some clean energy bill. There's been nothing else. And, we've said it for a million times. The one unifying principle is anti-Trump. That is coming to an end, like it or not. There is no set of ideas. That story basically says this Searchlight will be a safe harbor for those ideas to be packaged and messaged. So it's like somebody else come up with them. And that is where the real rubber meets the road, because the whole party can keep talking about we need to stop offending interest groups. But when you put the policy on the table, that is when the interest groups will freak the you-know-what out and say either where's our policy or you can't do that, go hurt somebody else.
Right.
And that's where, even Bill Clinton said, like, this is hard. So I don't know. I'm going to, I think, write about that here on Substack, because we are void of anyone with the real courage to do this. right
Yeah.
now.
And again, you said that this group says we have to come up with policy ideas irrespective of whether they offend our interest groups. Great principle, but no examples. And it's easy to say we need to make housing more affordable. We need to make college more affordable.
Right.
We need to focus on the working class. But if you don't have one specific idea that's both good and explainable, I don't know what you're actually accomplishing, except again fleecing the donors out of their money for more polling and some letterhead. Larry.
Yeah, nothing says looking forward and coming up with a new Democrat Party like evoking the image of Harry Reid in the title of your organization.
I thought of that. I thought of that too.
Robert Byrd will be next, I think, in the next incarnation. I think that there is a serious problem here. And by the way, like Sean, I don't want to give advice to Democrats, but at the same time, I think our nation is served with two effective, robust political parties who can actually engage on issues and actually form something out of the fight. That's what I want. Democrats, I think, are mired in two different problems. They are, in fact, a party of very disparate and desperate interest groups who want to ensure that they have a seat at the table and they have a voice in where things are going. And those interest groups right now that are sort of they have the gravitational pull for the Democrat Party is at odds with upwards to 80% of the American people. And it's not just affordable housing. It's not just affordable tuition. It's not all that stuff, because I think the American people see through that. Whenever they're told that the government is going to make something more affordable, that means more debt and more taxes, because it means the government is going to spend our money. They're actually still mired in the cultural issues that defined them 5 years ago. Until a Democrat can step forward on the national stage and say, excuse me, but men cannot get pregnant, they're going to be lost, Dan. I know that sounds
think it's
harsh.
It's not just cultural, though. I mean, it's also economic. I think and look, you saw this with Kamala Harris. Like she was void of idea. Like there was such small potatoes with that.
That's because the economic energy in your party is Bernie Sanders, the socialism.
But hold on a second. The Bernie Sanders wing touches the MAGA wing.
True. The populist part of it.
Tariffs, like undoing trade. What did Trump flirt with? Raising taxes on millionaires. Like I think and this is true of JD Vance too. Like Mark, you talked really well about all the structural advantages that he has. But if we were to look forward, he's not going to, immigration presumably is solved. I don't think he's going to say Donald Trump did nothing on immigration and it's a huge problem, so elect me, right? He may say we can't go backwards, but they'll have done the big tax bill, right? He will have confronted trade. So if Trump is successful, the question then is, what is JD Vance's, set of things about why he should be elected?
Finish off whatever Ivy League universities that Trump hasn't gotten.
There you go.
So get Dartmouth and Cornell.
Well, he runs in the same way that George Herbert Walker Bush ran in '88 as Trump's third term, although some of us would say fourth term, but I don't want to go there.
Kinder and gentler. Why fourth term? What am I missing?
Well, he won in 2020, but we're not allowed to say it.
Got it. Okay, one more thing on the Democrats, okay? And again, we're going to get to you in a moment, so please raise your hands. I see a couple new folks, which is great. So when I say that the model for DNC chair is Ron Brown, who in 1990 through 92 really said, I'm in charge of the Democratic Party. Like, I'm going to tell the donors, here's what we're doing. I'm going to tell the potential presidential candidates, here's what we're doing. I'm going to tell our interest groups, here's what we're doing. Because I'm the chairman of the Democratic Party. You had Jamie Harrison do an interview over the weekend, the party DNC, basically saying they didn't respect me enough. No one listened to me. It's like, take charge, dude. If you want to run for the job, take charge. Ask people who the chair of the DNC is. All these groups collecting all this money, every dollar they collect that's not going towards rebuilding the party is a waste. And so if it's not Ken Martin, that's, by the way, the name of the guy who's the chair of the DNC, who's supposed to take charge of the Schumer? Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, you've got all these nascent efforts to raise money to do roughly the same thing, which is to do polling to say, yeah, our party went way too far to the left and we have no ideas. Let's talk about solving that. But it just seems to me like they're wasting time, and people say, well, they'll sort it out by the midterms. They're going to do well in the midterms, plenty of time. It just seems like they're wasting this year. Dan, am I wrong?
Well, yeah, I think, yes, Well, they are and they aren't, which is you have to have these conversations. You have to have this tension, this frustration, this like, where are this is good, right? I think that there's two big differences here. When Ron Brown was chair, the DNC could take soft money. So the big money was being funneled into the DNC and they had control over it. And that gave them control over allocating it out in races and infrastructure building. Now it is diffused. It is all over the place. You have, all the different soft money donor tables where they get together. They make you come beg, for your supper. The DNC takes its hard money. It's like Trump, right? The RNC has some of it. Trump Inc. has some of it. The library has but Trump is a singular powerful force that controls everything. We don't have that. You're right. When I was at the DNC, Terry McAuliffe, that is in 2003, Terry said to the donors, I don't do the messaging, right? I am putting the infrastructure together, the money together, so that when we get a nominee, he or she, it'll be their message. Whoever wins is the message. But they will inherit money and they will inherit infrastructure and data. And that's, the end of it. And the donors respected Terry enough that they basically got on board. But there is no power structure right now.
Yeah, I think it's I think they need a both and situation. Yeah, they definitely need a Terry McAuliffe for Ron Brown. Ron Brown was perfect when you had the White House. But when you're out in the wilderness like this, I think the Democrats need someone like a Howard Dean. Say what you will about Howard Dean, but he was able to actually go out there. He was able to be the tip of the spear. He could do the news shows and the panel shows, and he could actually deliver a message because he understood how to run for office. He was a politician, and he actually ended up building a pretty good grassroots infrastructure that Barack Obama was able to use when he ran.
But the DNC doesn't set the message, and that's where Schumer and Jeffries and the DGA chairs will say, hey, you don't get in front of us and lead us to the water. You do what we say. Don't cause us headaches.
Haley Barbour and Ron Brown both did it. And I don't think
Haley Barbour, though, Mark, was so respected because no one debated his political challenge.
100%. But that's why I think it's insane that the DNC made their chair someone who's not in that category. Nice guy. I'm not saying he's going to be a failure by every metric. But when you're out and you're running it and you're dealing with Donald Trump, and you've got two Democratic leaders from Brooklyn who are not great outside players, how you could not put in the DNC slot someone who's a titan, I do not get. Because Adam Jettelson, nice guy. I'm not saying this group will be a failure, but I'll say, in all likelihood, every dollar that goes to that group is not going to the DNC, is not going to build the party. It's going to this quixotic effort to talk about creation of policies.
And by the way, nature hates a vacuum. We all know that. So by not having that DNC chair, and yeah, sure, Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer say, hey, stay in your lane, get out of our way. Well, they do a lousy job. Mark's right.
Well, that's a different story.
So what ends up happening then? Suddenly, whether you like it or not, David Hogg becomes the face and the voice of the party.
Well, they're not. I mean, if we went outside the Beltway, no one knows who David Hogg is. It's
I disagree.
More people know who David Hogg is than Ken Martin.
100%.
Oh, sure, of course. But
that's the question.
Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries were elected by their colleagues, right? They were, and they are the face of the party. The problem is they're both terrified of the base. They're absolutely terrified of the base. They have no control. The base controls them versus them controlling the base. Schumer's terrified of AOC, and Hakeem Jeffries is terrified of
but here's the other problem with them. They're both from Brooklyn, and when they go on TV, they move nothing.
I agree. Because they say nothing.
Right. But again, I wish I had the ability to track this every day. I wish I had like an app that tracked this. All these rich Democrats who history suggests will be part of any Democratic comeback, are now being offered 17 places to put their millions. Yeah. And I wouldn't, if I were one of the consultants to them, I wouldn't know where to tell them to put the money, but I wouldn't put it at the DNC.
Well, that's what they say to them. That's exactly. And look, here's the thing though, because if you're in those meetings with Schumer and Jeffries, the problem is when they say, all right, I'm thinking we're going to go say A or B, the caucus freaks out. Right. Everyone who's up in 2026 says, God damn it, Chuck, you're going to cause me a huge headache when I go home in August. If you pick a lane, I'm either going to get the progressives going nuts or my donors are going to go nuts. And Schumer, who is super politically smart, goes, shoot, I can't
Yeah.
say anything. And that's the
Right.
box
Right.
that
Dan.
both of those guys are in. And it's because their colleagues are all terrified. So the
Right.
answer is get primary, which
Right.
is what's happening. And that's good.
Right. Right.
Dan, when Nancy Pelosi is putting the toothpaste on her toothbrush and she looks in the mirror at herself every morning, what does she say? What's her inner monologue right now, seeing what's going on?
I'm exhausted. I did it for 20 years. And I told you all that you couldn't do this, that only I could do this. But you know what? It became about her and just, keeping that job. Everyone else who would have come up got run out because
Yep.
she just kept saying, only I can. And that's Schumer,
It looks
by the
like
way.
she
What
was
does Schumer
right.
say now?
Yeah.
Only I can do this.
Right. Tom Cook, welcome in. Have you been on this program before?
I have not.
All right. Well, glad to have you here. Where are you from in Pennsylvania?
Lancaster County.
That is ground zero for deciding everything in America. So
Love
congratulations.
that county.
Please use your power for good and not evil. Welcome in, sir. What's on your mind?
Well, I just speaking of Senator Byrd, funny thing. I watched an SNL episode of him, the David Petraeus hearing over Iraq War, and it was hilarious with Senator Byrd just wandering off the set.
Who played Senator Byrd? Do you remember?
I'm not good with names.
Yeah, it might be Farley. Somebody,
No, it wasn't
somebody
Farley. It was
wasn't
someone
Farley?
else, but it was hilarious.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll look it up because I remember it, but I don't remember who did it. Did you just want to come and reminisce about SNL, or did you have something else?
Bill Hader.
Bill Hader. That's right.
Yeah,
He was
Hader,
very good.
yeah.
He did a
God
really
bless
funny
Google.
He did a really funny West Virginia accent. I remember it all now.
Well, Mark, what you're doing here is great. I'm a very active member of Braver Angels.
Awesome. Great group.
Which great group started in 2016 and is nationwide. And encourage your listeners to participate because they are the tip of the
100%.
spear.
100%. And we want to do more with Braver Angels. So tell your colleagues to circle up with two-way, please.
Yeah. So what I wanted to ask was Republicans. This reconciliation package is really the only way that we can make a dent in spending because it focuses on the mandatory spending, which is 70% of the budget. And the spending on Social Security, on Medicaid and Medicare has just ballooned crazily since 2020. Why do the Republican communication consultants or whoever is telling these reps to say what they say, why don't they voice more about calling out to Democrats and saying, hey, we just need a couple of you guys to come on board and help us really make a dent on something that is about to blow up in 7 years, Social Security.
Yep. Great. Quick.
Why is that messaging so hard? Republicans have always had a hard time talking about abortion, but with MAGA, it's breathing life into that. But why is it so hard for us to talk about entitlement spending and get some Democrats on board that are in purple district?
Great question, Tom. Larry.
There are multiple answers to the question, in my opinion. The first is the most fundamental is that Donald Trump ran saying that he wasn't going to touch Social Security and Medicare. So to go there and to suggest that now we need fundamental reforms of Social Security and Medicare and change the benefits and change the provisions would be completely counteractive to the president's promise. So they need to adhere and toe the line. They can get away with saying they're cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, and I think that that's accurate, but they can't do any more than that right now, at least not in the reconciliation framework. But there's another more important aspect, and that is the people aren't screaming about it. You are. I appreciate that this is important to you, but the people aren't demanding that deficit spending end, that the debt gets taken care of, that the ticking time bomb with these entitlement programs is resolved. Until the people demand it, like we saw in the 90s. Who would have thought that Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich would shake their hand over balancing the budget? It only happened because it became a politically viable issue for both parties. Until this becomes a political winner instead of a loser, it's not going to happen.
Dan.
Yeah, I think the other challenge, Tom, is it's not yet. Yes, Democrats have been resistant. As the Republican Party becomes a working class party, that is also which is why you're now seeing parts of the Republican coalition are dead set against cutting Medicaid, because it's their voters. It is, you are taking health care from our voters, the elderly in our state or district that relies on Social Security to kind of have a decent, retirement. The problem that you have with debt and deficit is everyone talks about it in the abstract. But once you start to touch the real lives of real people, this is what happened with Doge, it's a huge problem. So, I mean, you're right. It probably is going to take a Democrat for like Nixon to go to China on this. And as we talk about ideas for the party, this is one where it'll be interesting if somebody doesn't run on putting this on the table.
All right. Tom, thank you. Very grateful to you. Please come back. Jordan, you've been here before?
I've watched the show a bunch, but this is my first time raising my hand.
Jordan, we're two-thirds two-thirds the way there. Welcome in. Tell folks where you are and how you found Two-Way, and then ask your question, please.
I'm a CT transplant in Orlando, and started watching you guys leading up to the election, and just kind of liked getting the take from both sides without, total bias. Thought it was really helpful.
All right, I appreciate that. How do you feel about our peace, love, and understanding ethos?
I love it. That's okay. Why I stay here.
All right, grateful to you. What's on your mind, sir?
So there's two things. One was that I think there's a perception that Congress is getting less and less productive over the years, and it seems like the narrative right now is this is becoming like one of the least productive Congresses in history. I think like last session up to this point in the first year of the last session, they had passed like 3 bills or something. It was bananas. So I guess I'm curious if we think a less productive Congress is in any way good for anybody, or how that can be solved. And then the other story that seems to be underreported, but is kind of bubbling up in some conservative or libertarian circles, is the story about Palantir and the database of all the U.S. citizens. That's not been touched on a lot, and I'm wondering if that has any teeth, or if it's just kind of, people floating it out there to see.
Are you interested in that from a civil liberties point of view?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Larry, address one or both, and then Dan will do the same. Thank you, Jordan, for the question.
My wife is a recovering journalist. She used to work at CQ Roll Call, and at the beginning of the Trump administration, they made hats. They had swag there at Roll Call for a while, and it said "Make Congress Great Again," which I love. It's one of my favorite hats, because I'm with you. I would like Congress to go back and sort of flex that Article 1 muscle a little bit more than they do. The problem is that they've become so entrenched in just maintaining their majority and their leadership that that's all they care about. No one elected a member of Congress so that they could vote for them 2 years from now. They elected them to do something right now. And I would like for them to get back to that. I think that Speaker Johnson's intent to get back to regular order and actually have a committee budgetary appropriations process, and actually do it like we're supposed to do it pre-Boehner days, would be a huge step in that direction. Because I think Congress, once they realize that they actually have quite a bit of power and the ability to get stuff done, they may like it. And they may recognize the fact that they're there for more than just blocking or assisting whatever the executive branch tells them. But I don't know. I think, Dan, you'd agree this is a bipartisan problem, and it's been going on really since FDR made the executive branch so powerful and robust.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really been the last 15 years or so where it's been Congress's attitude has been presidents use executive orders. Don't make us cast a vote. And so, they do kind of the bare minimum. It's what's called, reauthorizations. Like, you have to fund the Defense Department. You have to fund the Agriculture Department. So, okay, we have to do that. We'll stick a few, ornaments on the Christmas tree, But otherwise, you executive branch, you do it. You take the hits, you lead, and we'll follow. Bipartisan, abdication of duty. I'm with you. They'll do it when voters reward them for doing it. On the second part, I lobbied for Palantir years ago. That company, it's remarkable the amount of information they have, the what they do in terms of finding needles in haystacks of trillions of pieces of data. They're one of the Defense Department's top contractors. They have been for years, going back to the Iraq War. I will hope and pray that the U.S. government uses the information for the right purposes. But boy, oh boy, that company is a behemoth.
Yeah.
No one knows about.
Jordan, thank you. So we're trying to get one new person in. So again, if you've never asked a question on this program, please raise your hand. In the meantime, we're going to play one of my favorite games, which is instant Pinocchios for a Trump social media post. I'm going to read it sentence by sentence. This went up in the
Is this new? Is this been out in the last hour?
No, in the last hour. He did this while we were on the air. I'll read it sentence by sentence, clause by clause, and you tell me from 0 to 4 Pinocchios, how many Pinocchios do you apply to each sentence? And Dan will go first, and then Larry. Just a number: 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Here we go.
This is not Sean Spicer. Yep. Okay.
Donald Trump. Here we go. He's talking about the aforementioned Rand Paul, the gentleman from Kentucky. Here we go.
Boy. Oh boy.
Rand votes no on everything. Dan.
That's 0 Pinocchios. That's fairly true.
Yeah. Larry?
Well, it is a hyperbolic statement, so I think it's unfair to judge in such a way that you would just...
Larry.
Number 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4 Pinocchios.
I think it's inaccurate. An inaccurate statement.
So 4 Pinocchios?
Well, he does not vote no on everything.
So 4 Pinocchios.
That would technically be a...
Technically, you're right.
Here we go. But never has any practical or constructive ideas. Dan?
So far, I'm with Trump. 0 Pinocchios.
0 Pinocchios. Okay. Larry, we'll probably give that 4 because every so often he's got one.
I think libertarians, by the nature of the beast, are often very impractical, but I actually find myself agreeing with Rand Paul on many issues.
So you'd say 0. You'd say 4 Pinocchios.
So he offers ideas. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So far, you guys have got 2 zeros and 2
Yeah,
4s.
exactly.
Okay. His ideas are actually crazy. Dan.
Boy, I'm gonna have to get a MAGA hat. I'll say 1.
1 Pinocchio.
One
Larry,
Pinocchio.
his ideas
on domestic issues, Rand Paul is not crazy. That's a 4.
Okay, that's a
maybe
4.
If he's talking about foreign policy, you know what? Can we make this a 2, maybe 2.5?
You can do whatever you want. I don't know. Do they do half Pinocchios at the Post? I don't know. All right.
They do.
Then he says in parentheses, losers, exclamation point, referring to his ideas. So how many Pinocchios, Dan, do you assign to the notion that Rand Paul's ideas are losers?
1.
1 Pinocchio. Larry?
You're making me fight between my uncle and my cousin. This is not fair. I love them both in their own special way.
All right, Larry will pass on that one.
I'll give it a 1 as well.
Okay.
Larry.
Again, 0 Pinocchios means it's absolutely true. 4 Pinocchios means it's
I love that
totally
Dad
false.
is so disgusted with
Here we
my
go.
ability to be a diplomat.
We just got 2 more. Just 2 more. And then again, I still don't see a new hand up, so I'm filling because I want to get a third new person. The people of Kentucky can't stand him. Dan.
4 Pinocchios. That is
absolutely 4 Pinocchios.
4 Pinocchios. Okay.
The president is inaccurate on that.
Last one. And just imagine in your mind's eye, the last 3 words of this last sentence are in all caps. This, he's referring to reconciliation. This is a big growth bill, exclamation point. Dan.
It's a big growth. Yeah, I mean, that's probably a 1. Yeah,
that's a 0 Pinocchios. This is a huge growth bill. We have no idea how our economy is going to explode with no tax on overtime, no tax on tips. It's going to be huge.
Yeah, well, and of course, if it doesn't pass, it would be a growth killer.
But of course, what I will give Trump credit for is Rand's opposition is it's not pro-growth enough. Rand's opposition is it doesn't cut spending, which he omits any mention of in his True Social post. So kudos to Bill Clinton-esque shiny red ball.
So the absence of the mention of the elephant in the room, that gets 4 Pinocchios.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
All right. No new hand up. Very disappointed. This is the last episode of the show. Just want to tell you what a great run we've had. Very much appreciate.
I can't believe I killed the morning meeting.
I know, Larry.
I can't believe this.
But Larry, you can put in your Wikipedia, appeared as a substitute host on the last episode of the morning meeting.
There's
seven more minutes, folks. If you've
Sean's going to kill me.
If you've never raised your hand, now's the time. Now's the time. All right. While we wait, we go to what we like
my wife, Meredith. I know Meredith is watching. Meredith,
I think
on,
Sean didn't come on because he didn't want to have to give Pinocchios to Trump. I think that's why.
While we wait, we'll go to a pro, Michael Graham. Hardly a first-time
Hey, Michael.
But a good friend of Larry's and of ours. And Michael, welcome in.
And Larry owes me because it was getting fired for WMAL that gave him an opportunity to get my job.
That's
so
right.
congratulations.
Former
I try to do my
WMAL.
part if I can. And by the way, I'm actual libertarian, and I would have given all kinds of Pinocchios for that. So Larry wussed out usual.
Behind your back, Larry and I, Michael, we call you Wally Pip.
Oh, that's a good. I'll take it. So it pains me to admit that Mark Halperin said something smart yesterday, but it has been stuck in my brain.
It happens.
And
they load it into the teleprompter. I read it, and
exactly.
Broken clock syndrome.
And Dan was smart to jump on it too. Which the equation is no person is illegal plus from the river to the sea equals Boulder. And I know the press is very, still has a lot of effect. Another thing that you've stumbled into the truth on, Mark, is that the establishment press still has more influence than people want to admit, even in the era of social media. And they've really tried hard to suppress the political side of this. You know what I mean? Like to keep it. But I think that this is one of those situations like we saw leading up to the 2024 win for Trump, where you can pretend watching guys win girls sports doesn't matter. You can pretend the border's not a crisis works and the voters still see it. I think Democrats are, I don't get it. I'm like John Fetterman did that fake debate down the street from me in Boston yesterday with McCormick, and it was a great, it was a round table, it was fine. And I'm like, why aren't Democrats doing this? Punch the free Palestine people in the face, punch the open borders people in the face. You can still be a solid John Fetterman Democrat. And so I guess my question for you is there something happening that I don't see? Because I'm looking for it and I don't see it.
All right, Michael, great question. Hold on before you go, before you guys respond, rather. Edward Johnson, have you ever been on this show before? Edward, just say hello. Just unmute and say hello. You don't need to ask anything. Just say hello.
That's friendly.
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning,
All right.
Edward.
Good morning, Edward. Thank you for saving the morning meeting.
Edward, you saved the show. The entire morning meeting community owes you a debt of gratitude.
Completely organic.
So thank you for
The
that.
least I can do from the People's Republic of California.
All right, thank you for getting up early.
Thank you, Edward.
We'll let you go back to your anonymity, but thank you for saving the show. Michael, would you like Larry and Dan to respond, or do you just want your monologue to continue? And I say that with affection. Okay.
Well, you know me, man. I can vamp for 50. I open the fridge, the light comes on. I do 10 minutes.
Dan, explain to Michael why your party doesn't seem to be getting the joke.
Yeah, because they're afraid of their base. I mean, look, Fetterman can do it because there is less of a social progressive base in Pennsylvania. It's more of an economic populism base up in, out in the T and up in Scranton.
Right.
A lot of these other senators and governors, et cetera, have these super progressive, 15, 20% of the electorate. It's where the online money is. It's where the organization is. And they're just like, I don't need the headache of going to war with them. So I say nothing. Right. And that was Kamala Harris's principle, almost all of the campaign. Say nothing, offend nobody, try to hold everything together, and have the other guy be so offensive that you hold your nose and come to me.
Yeah.
And Larry, do you agree that one reason they're able to say nothing is because of the establishment media's willingness to leave the questions unasked? I mean, imagine 3 Tea Party related events like the Shapiro Jewish Museum and this. Every Tea Party, politician would be sworn. You must talk about this.
Right. That's
but
right.
If you're a Democrat, you can just walk. I mean, we've got active campaigns across the country, no questions.
The people. I'll just say real quick, Larry. The people who think they're doing their best to protect the Democrats and help them, the dominant media is wrapping them in blue bubble wrap and leaving them completely vulnerable to reality. Larry.
That's right. Because they're still operating under the rules of 15 years ago before there was an alternative media, before there was another way for news to reach the people. You're 100% right. And Michael, you point out that the border is probably, I raised the question of whether you can say whether a man can get pregnant or not. That's tough for them to deal with. The border should be easy. It's the lowest hanging fruit possible. Yep. And I wonder the fact that they haven't done it, the fact that they haven't stepped up and say, yeah, we were in the wilderness. We're going to fix this now. You can count on us. I wonder how much of it is linked toward the very real political power they get from having the open borders and having the influx of illegal immigrants. I'm not saying that they're all voting, but what I'm saying is the census rules dictate that all of those people, whether they're citizens or not, get counted for apportionment, and that has helped states like California, New York, and Illinois for their representation in the House and in the Electoral College. I know that's cynical to think of, but I think that that's a big part of this.
I still don't think it's their motivation, but it's crazy. Michael, thank you for coming. Always happy to see you. We're glad you're here on the day the show was saved.
Thanks for getting fired from WMAL, Michael.
Yeah. Larry, so happy to have you back. And you're on two-way tonight tomorrow?
I am. Right. I'm on two-way tonight for the first time. I've never done that before.
All right.
I will not have coffee. I will have a glass of wine.
It's a totally different vibe. You'll like it. It's like
I watched Amber Duke last night. She's one of my faves.
Amber Duke's amazing. I love having her on. Anyway, Larry, thank you for coming. Let me tell everybody what's coming up. First of all, later today, the latest episode of Next Up will drop, and I'm going to be doing a reported monologue on the topic we were just talking about, which is the media's failure to understand that they're imprisoning the Democrats through their lack of being willing to acknowledge the flaws and the errors of great consequence. And we'll be focusing on the granddaddy of them all, 60 Minutes. Plus my guest, David Ignatius, will talk about Ukraine and Russia, and the senator from Indiana, Jim Banks. So watch for that on YouTube and on podcast platforms where you get your podcasts coming up later today. 6 o'clock tonight on Two-Way tonight, as I said, Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright David Mamet, who has a new book, which was praised by Donald Trump on Truth Social. So we'll talk about that. And Steve Elmendorf, the Democratic strategist, a fan favorite, will be part of the program as well. And then in the Moynihan Report, 7 p.m. tonight, Mark Kriegel, the author of The Baddest Man, The Making of Mike Tyson, will join Michael. Again, you can watch that live on Two-Way or on YouTube at 7 Eastern. And then in 23 hours, really 22 hours and 59 minutes, because we've gone over, this program will be back. Larry will inexplicably and seamlessly have disappeared, and Sean will be back in that seat, Lord willing.
Thank you. I will never wear this shirt again. Thank you to all those who DM me how terrible it is on camera. I see them all. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for your feedback.
Thank you for that.
It's high anxiety.
Thank you all for watching. Thank you for our 2.5 new participants. And thank you everybody for being part of the Two-Way community. I'll see you at 6, and all of us, except for Larry, we'll see you at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.